Welcome to the 2021 Bizcommunity series, celebrating diversity and inclusivity in the South African advertising industry, made possible by the ACA, Association for Communication and Advertising. I'm your host, Rutendo Nyamuda, and today I am absolutely honored to be speaking to this year's 2021 Louise Hall of Fame inductees, executive producer Lorraine Smit, co-owner of Darling Films, and one of the inductees in the Louise Hall of Fame, and executive producer Melina MacDonald, co-owner of Darling Films and the other inductee in the Hall of Fame. And today they're joined by two of their directors, Kitumnyetsi Kadi, also known as Director Kit, film and commercial director at Darling Films, who was also among the Forbes Africa 30 Under 30 in 2020, as well as Gale Maimane, film director and photographer, represented by Darling Films, and alumni of the Design and Dubbers Emerging Creatives. Welcome to you all.
Thank you for having us.
Absolute pleasure. And so to kickstart, I guess, Lorraine and Melina, we've read all over the news and heard about your historical induction into the Louise Hall of Fame. A massive, massive, massive congratulations. And what was so beautiful is you took the whole team up to the podium with you guys as well. Can you express what that moment felt like for you, if you can take us back, and what the award really means to you and your team?
Yeah, should I kick off?
Yes.
Okay. I think that it really was an amazing recognition for our team and for ourselves. And the reason we decided to take our entire team with us is because we're as good as our people. And we've had the amazing support and growth of this team that has been part of the journey with us. So I'm going to let you kick in.
Okay. Yes, I think it absolutely expresses how we felt, because we felt that we went into this unknown new company 7 years ago, and people came along bravely and they gave us their careers. They put their careers in our hands, and to be able to get the recognition, just not from your own company, but from the industry, alongside the John Hunts and all the amazing, predecessors of that award, and as females and as partners, and a female-run company, is just incredible.
Yeah, it said a lot for the young woman, we believe. And the amazing thing for us was the responses we got from people that was like, basically, we're every man's winner. We are women that have been recognized by both male and female peers, by the industry. And it made it very possible for women-run businesses, for every young girl who's got a dream of being something. It was really very flattering to see how many people came to us and said that to us. We were very proud of it, actually.
Absolutely, and a very, very well-deserved award and very well-deserved recognition as well, just for all the work you've done in the industry. You've spoken about the last 7 years. Are there any bodies of work in the last 7 years that stand out for you, where you're like, wow, this was incredible. This was a hallmark, monumental moment for us?
Definitely. I think for us, the meaningful work has really been highlighted. And when we say meaningful work, there are sometimes brands attached, but it's work for good.
We've done a lot of work in violence against women campaigns. Blame No More is another one. It did very well internationally for Hype magazine. And Gale, I'm going to let you chat a little bit about your work on Joko, maybe, because I think Kit and Gale have also got a lot to say about campaigns that have meaning. So would you like to jump in?
Cool, no problem. So I think on work that's like purpose-driven, that's charitable, work that is something that goes beyond the frame of what advertising is primarily, is super important to Darling Films and to our execs and to us, because they put that into us and making us want to do those types of projects. A project I worked on that was very close to my heart and I feel super proud to have worked on was one for Joko through Unilever. The campaign supported power, people opposing women abuse. And with that campaign, what we did was we created a commercial wherein the box itself had a little ribbon against GBV. The whole thing is an anti-GBV campaign. But what they had done, and it's I think a credit as well to the agency in a big way and the creatives, they created a drive where a rand from each box sold would go to the charity. And in the first 3 months, and I am so happy to say they made over 3 million rand in what they could contribute to what is essentially a plague and pandemic on our country and women in this country. The piece will air and continue to air for a while. We made that now 2.5 years ago. It's in its third year soon. It will go on for 5. And that's just something that I think a lot of producers wouldn't have said yes to that board. A lot of execs would have maybe not done that because it didn't seem like something that could sort of snowball into so much meaning. But I remember I sat with Mel and I was like, I want to do this. And she was like, do you think you can? And I was like, I think I can. and we did it. And now it's a piece of work that we're all super proud of. And yeah.
Wow, thank you for that, and thank you so much for sharing.
I think Kit's also got a little bit of a contribution in that one. Another female.
Dr. Kit, over to you. Yeah, what kind of stands out for you?
Impactful projects. I mean, it's been a very interesting journey, and a big part of it has been finally being able to be comfortable within the industry and feel that there's a sense of confidence and trust between you and the brand. And there was a campaign that we got briefed on last year. It's a Kotex campaign. And I remember when they were briefing us, they were like, okay, cool. So there's the commercial, there's the documentary aspect to it, there's a music video aspect to it. And it's essentially an open brief. And oh yes, we'd also like you to act in the commercial. So the brief was very intimidating creatively, and also just trying to figure out if practically I could do it. But for me, it signaled a huge shift in the way the relationship and the kind of trust that's been created between creatives like me and really big brands. And the messaging behind the entire project was something that was very personal to me and to everybody that was on the team. It was probably, I don't want to lie, maybe 80% female team, but all of the HODs were females, which, you know, somebody will say that and everybody's like, yes, it's a great idea, but it's always about talent. It's never about, okay, we just want you because you're female. The people that we chose to work with, they were all outstanding in their craft and their departments. And what we created was really something quite significant. And then there was another campaign maybe 2 years ago. And this one was a little bit different because we're used to working with more traditional brands. But this one was a campaign with Netflix when they'd arrived in Africa and they wanted to do kind of a statement piece and advert announcing their arrival. And again, it was about speaking creatively from the voice of an African creative today, what it means to be on a global platform. And, you know, these are all the things that we've done as a team. And between the brief and what we achieved, we're always very shocked. I won't lie.
And in the most positive way.
Yes.
In a way that the concept and the idea grows beyond what we believe. And I think that's a really important thing that Melina and Lorraine put into all of us that are in like the directing roster, is that our vision is something that is important, and they believe in us as individuals and what we think and feel and want to put into our work. They facilitate in a way that I think only Hall of Famers can.
Not embarrassing us at all, Khale.
Not at all.
Thank you.
Director Kit, I actually just want to come back to you quickly. You mentioned something very interesting, you know, in terms of working on that Netflix kind of campaign. And I want to find out from your perspective, how do we measure up as an industry in comparison to the international film industry and what's happening in that scene?
You know, it's interesting because a couple of years ago, I would have been so intimidated by just the idea of being compared to the international space. But just in the past couple of years, on the kind of, not years, past couple of months, some of the projects that we've worked on, a couple of months ago, we worked on a Lux campaign, and it was with an international client. And, you know, honestly, you hear international and you think you're not on the same par creatively, you won't be able to speak the same language in the room, in the same spaces, communicate the same way. But we're the same, if not even better in a lot of aspects. So that's in terms of our craft. But in terms of really the kind of confidence and the kind of team that you need behind you, I think it's still lacking in a lot of other ways. And I know because at Darling, it's not a lot of us in terms of the kind of brand that we are and the kind of directors and producers that we are that are able to push past these barriers of being in international spaces. So yes, we're on par, but we still have a long way to go.
The interesting thing is that we have to remember that more than 50% of the commercial industry in South Africa is internationally based. There's a huge service industry where international companies come and use our resources and our crews and our people in order to be able to make work for Europe, for America, for Africa, for anywhere. And it's all happening, it's all coming from outside, but they don't use our director talent. And somewhere down the line, that is something that needs to be addressed as an industry, and that should be promoted as an industry, because our directors are basically the reason why the work is so good in the first place. And it'll be good for us to be able to use that to actually grow our industry as well, where the directors are encouraged to be chosen to make things here rather than always bringing in the imports. So that's something South Africa needs to learn, I think.
Listening to Gale and director Kit speak from their own personal experiences and how things have been for them, you know, within your organization, it feels like you've, you know, also cultivated and created this environment, because on the other hand, you could have, you know, star directors and star people, but it's also under the management and the direction of people at the helm of these companies that provide these environments and the mindset to also strategically say we need diversity and strategically say we need inclusion or inclusivity. So that is absolutely incredible. And thank you for cultivating that within your own company. So intentional as well.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure and an honor.
And so I'm gonna switch gears into, you know, kind of future growth and looking at, you know, some of the things that have happened. Obviously, within the pandemic, a few things have shifted and changed. But for all of you, and I'll start with Lorraine and Melina, what are the trends and the shifts that you're starting to pick up and see, you know, looking ahead for the next year, even the next, you know, coming years?
Want to go?
No, you go first.
Okay. I think the trend that has been around for quite some time, but is definitely now coming with every single brief, is that the clients want to be on different platforms, that you don't just get briefed very seldom just for a TV commercial, which happened years ago. That's what you're employed for. It's 30 seconds and that's it. You now have to do all the supporting communication around it, often stills on set, digital elements, YouTube elements. So it's almost like a 360, we like to call it a 360. And you bring in the talent that you need, because often your one director can't just deal with that. And that's a definite, I think it's here to stay, and possibly moving away from commercials might even start happening as target markets are better reached on social media. So that's one of the major trends for me. Budgets are tighter after COVID and timing is less.
Wow.
Hopefully not a trend that will stay.
Yeah. We're also seeing a trend towards clients wanting to reach, brands trying to reach the consumer on different platforms. This year's Loeries was very telling, especially in the film division, which is obviously where we feature the most, when it came to what was awarded. People are interested in seeing things that are a little bit different and a little bit out of the norm. And you know, when we did Joburg Ballet, that was quite revolutionary. When we did the Joburg Ballet campaign, it was an online digital campaign for the Johannesburg Ballet, where it was basically going on whatever was trending in Twitter. And it was a series, and it was really something that no one had ever seen before. We had taken it on as a project. There's also a huge drive towards brands having a certain amount of sociability and having a voice with social issues and social responsibility, which we really applaud, because we think that brands with responsibility or, responsible marketing is something that really should be, there's a good place to put your money, let's say, for lack of a better word. So that's, I think, for us, kind of quite a big thing from a trends point of view.
Yeah.
And Gale, for you as a director, do these shifts and changes perhaps change any way that you approach your work and that you come to your work, or is it still similar?
So for me, I really enjoy the challenge of creating pieces that have to live in different platforms and places, because I think it allows you to craft a story in a way where it will reach someone differently. So you're allowed to play with the film language differently and sort of interpret that and create. Because I think the very important thing that always stood in my mind about ballet, because when ballet was made, I worked as a creative researcher. So I was working with the directors while they were working on ballet and the concepts. And the thing that really came out for me there is that, like, how innovative can we be? How much can we sort of relook and reshape and give our own views on things? So I enjoy that work is more purpose driven. I enjoy that work has to be in multiple aspect ratios. And I've done work in multiple aspect ratios. I've done work where we're making content and making an ad and having stills and even being in commercials that are not out yet and doing the same. You know what I mean? Like, we enjoy it. And I think we enjoy it because we understand that whilst things are changing, stories will always work. Like, stories are always emotive, and we're lucky enough to be in the position to work with such an emotive medium, and it's essentially a design. So to me, I get the production brief, so I see the the aspects and the things that we need to deliver, and I get the script, which is the creative. And while it might be potentially, if it were 35 scenes and like maybe 3 pieces of VO or something, we still pull that together and make a new world and a new thing. So for me, trend wise, I'm enjoying the shift, but I didn't know it any differently. You know what I mean? I came in through the digital way, making vertical pieces, making 6-second stories that need to make cogent sense, 10-second stories about concepts that blow your mind. How are we going to do this? Until now, I'm at a place where I'm making work that is a longer deliverable. So I'm very much into it. I think what is what would be interesting to see is truly, do we move away from the commercial and concentrate on the content film? Do we now, like, we did a thing where we shot a vertical commercial and turned the camera on its side, which is not, I guess, not the way you should, but it worked out, and it made for picture that was so different, and it forced me and the DOP to interpret picture in a way where even our technical knowledge of where does the lens curve and how does the bow and where's the softness and how do we focus, it threw a challenge at all of us. But because we are craftsmen and people that care, obviously in our integrity, in our times of like finding out things and making it work, we went and saw what is the best way to do this, how do we light, where do we put the things, how do we stack. It just allows you to paint in a new way, for me personally.
And Director Kit, with all of the shifts and the changes, how do you approach them? Are you very experimental when it comes to your craft, or are you the kind of person who likes to stick to, perhaps things that they're comfortable with and they know? How do you approach these shifts and changes?
The best pitch is when I get scared. Is when I've written down the idea, and then I'm having kind of like a pre-pitch internally with the team. And I'm not sure if we're going to be able to pull this off, but it comes from a place of complete and utter, let me just take a chance. So I do love to experiment. But I think for me, the shift in what's happened a lot with COVID, and even before COVID, in terms of the kind of barriers, access to different content from across the world, that's been one of the biggest shifts from the kind of stories that are being told. Because the world has kind of opened up, we need to find more singular ways of impacting everybody. And those are just universal messages of story. And it also means that our attention towards America has shifted now. We're looking at stories from different parts of the world, from Africa, from Asia. And it means we're also looking at individual storytellers because of how easy it is to watch different content on your cell phone and to make different content. So being a creator doesn't need as much as it used to need technically, and even in terms of experience sometimes. It really at this point needs you to be very intentional and to have a really great story. So it means that we're going to be seeing very nuanced, very different kind of storytellers from across the world and very different ways of telling story. And I'm completely all for it. I want to push it. And I also want to marry this new world that we're in. If the rest of the world is moving in terms of tech and development, South African filmmakers are still a little bit behind when it comes to that next level of storytelling. And for me, the dream has not to live in Hollywood, but to be in a space where the kind of projects I'm creating are on that global platform.
Mm. Oh, wow, that's absolutely amazing. It will be very interesting to see, you know, based on everything you've all mentioned, what the future holds, what it looks like. Lorraine and Melina, you've spoken about tighter budgets, you know, perhaps pulling away from commercials, and all of you have mentioned, you know, going into these digital spaces. So it almost feels like outcomes and expectations are higher and greater, but you know, the cost behind it might decrease a little bit. How do you think that is going to affect you as a company, Lorraine and Melina?
You go.
So we are definitely in a position where the budgets are getting tighter. But the reality for us is that it would be great to see brands investing in South African filmmakers. We are getting smaller budgets locally, but the internationals are coming in with these huge budgets and they're bringing international directors in. And the brands that are operating in this country, if they had to just think about whether or not it's the diversity, which is part of the dialogue worldwide now, it is not worth maybe investing in South African filmmakers, it might be worthwhile. When you see what our guys do with R1 million versus what somebody else does with £1 million, what would happen if you gave a South African filmmaker half that? They could also be spectacular and make the most amazing TV commercials and do some of that. So as much as we feel like we all have to be cleverer and we sharpen our pencils and our budgets are tighter and we're in the Hall of Fame, but we still have bonds. But so as much as we feel all those things and we invest in our craft, because realistically for us, we seem to be, as much as the budgets are tighter, it just means that the profits get lower and the money still goes in front of camera because our passion is our craft. And our passion is growing people, and people are only as good as the work they produce. So for us to be able to, I mean, I'd like to implore people to just think very carefully about what they're giving these guys to make, because invest the budget so that that filmmaker can bring you something unique and special and different. That's my view. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
And you're all, you know, just listening to you speak, you are all phenomenal women and so inspiring, you know, individually and collectively as a team. I want to know what inspires you, whether it's people, movies, series, books. What is it, that inspiration that ignites your soul and sets your soul on fire when you're in the office, when you're working, when you're on set? What inspires you? Gale, I will start with you.
Okay, so for me, I think a good way to frame this is that I've been having conversations with other filmmakers about what do you do? Do you capture beauty or do you create it? And for me, I feel like my process is about capturing things. I want to remember things. I want to create things that other people can see and feel and understand and be touched by. So what inspires me is very much story, but even beyond that is looking at things through my own perspective. And I do this by I take film photographs. I work in stills as well, personally, as a way of expressing myself as an artist. But what I find really inspiring are people. because without people, there isn't a story. Without the funny quirks of how someone walks or talks or does something, there's nothing to create. So and when you get into people, then you get into worlds, and you get into architecture and art and design and space and color and everything. I'm kind of like a magpie. Like, all the shiny things make me go like, oh my gosh, what is that? Where are we going? This is amazing. So for me, I also come from a family of like writers, and journalists, and I've always been encouraged to speak my truth and interpret the truth of those that can't speak for themselves. So story becomes a very magical thing for me, where all the things I love get to interplay together. So I'm just inspired generally. And it's sometimes a little bit of a problem for the execs, because I say yes to everything because I love it all. But I think the thing that I'm driving myself towards now to really feel and get inspiration from is, how do we make something more interesting than it's previously been? And that's genuinely, how do we innovate the way that we do? Because the craft of storytelling is as old as the languages we speak, as old as we can track back all through our ancestry and people. But how do we turn emotion into something that can be expressed and given in the film medium in a way that it hasn't before? And obviously we're in competition with things like how things on social work, like how memes and TikTok videos and like WhatsApp sharing and like all these new ways of people communicating and telling story. Even like clips, like memes and clips, they drive me wild. Like there's so much to draw from and so much to learn. And even like if you look at it, like A24 made the film Zola, which is about a Twitter thread. And I read that Twitter thread when it came out, and I was enthralled. I read all 100 of those 120 whatever character messages, and I was like, they have to make it a movie, and they have. And they carried that spirit of the internet into the film, but into something that is a traditional means of communication and creativity. So I think innovation is a thing that we all strive for and are inspired by. But personally, beyond my magpie of everything makes me happy, being new, doing something different.
Thank you for that. Thank you for sharing. That's absolutely incredible. And Lorraine and Melina, Loeries Hall of Fame recipients. As you were standing on that stage, I'm sure there were so many young people who want to also be like you when they're older and want to also receive the award. And you're obviously an inspiration to them. Who or what inspires you to do what you do every day? Where do you find that, as Director Kit says, where do you find that source of inspiration? Melina, I'll start with you.
Okay.
I was ready to go.
You know this time.
I wanted to just say that we love what we do. And I know I speak for both of us. And that is such an amazing gift to have, to be in a career, not only a company, but our whole careers. We've loved what we do. I see people who don't want to go to work, who have really bad days. Of course we have bad days, but ultimately we love the industry, we love the people in it, and we just love what we do. I mean, there's going to be a problem one day. We'll never retire. We'll be like the oldest producers around, because what are we going to do? We just love it, and that's an inspiration. And also the people that the girls were talking about, the people you come across in a longer career, obviously, that cross your paths. I've had a lot of inspiration from people I worked with that were my bosses. A lot of them were female, and then you take the good from the one and the good from the other, and you build your own being. And so I think it's we love beautiful things. We love the people mostly. When we did the Loeries celebration after the Hall of Fame, there was someone with us that is not in our industry, and he said to me, "Look at these people. How do you explain this to someone?" Because Kit was shooting the shadow that the candle was making. Someone else was something else in the corner. Someone else was dressing a drink. I mean, everyone. We even shot an ABBA video, which we won't be able to share because it's but the people in the industry are amazing. Sorry, I got carried away.
Yeah. Yeah, so we definitely, I think our inspiration does come from our people. We have an amazing group of people that bring it every day. For us, I mean, I think both Lorraine and I have felt that. We immediately, when we first had this question, we both said our people. And certainly for me, I have to say that everything that Lorraine said applies. And also for us, we love a challenge. When we started Darling, we didn't start an easy way. We started with people whose best part of their careers was ahead of them. We weren't scared to try and do something different, try and be innovative. And I think we have a reputation, even with the agencies, a lot of them will say that they can come to us with absolutely anything. Like, do you think it's possible to do? And we'll say yes before we figured out how. I remember many, many years ago, we had a big job for Wyden and Kennedy, an international job, and Lorraine and I were standing there. And I looked at her and I looked at Lorraine and I said to her, okay, I've just said yes to this job. She says, have we figured out how we're going to do it? She goes, and I said, no, but we will. And we did, you know, we both put our heads together and we did it. And I think the biggest inspiration is the work that's still to come. And the reality is the recognition of South African and African filmmakers in an international platform. And that is the challenge. That is the next step for all of us. We have to be recognized, and we don't have to be recognized by London calling and we go and live there. We have to be recognized here. They're all coming anyway. They must see our filmmakers for who they are. So for me, that has become my next goal. And certainly, hopefully for Darling, it'll be our next goal. So let's see if we can make that happen.
This conversation has certainly made me want to change industries. So I'm going to join the film industry. I'm so excited. I want to find out.
And you must come to Darling.
I'll come to Darling. For young people who are excited about joining the industry or starting their careers or are starting to apply for jobs as well, what advice would you want to share with them? What advice would you want to leave with them? Melina, I will start with you.
Work hard. This is not a career you get into because you want to make a living. This is a career that is 100% about passion. If you follow your heart, the money will come, but work hard, follow your passion, love it. That's my best advice, because it's not easy. And you don't get rich enough for the amount you work, I can guarantee you.
And to add to that is, I would think the biggest thing to add is be patient. Don't try and be an overnight success and be a flash in the pan and do one commercial and get it wrong and then never get another opportunity. Be patient. That's how all our directors have started their careers. Like Gale says, she was a creative researcher for a couple of years. She worked with a bunch of directors. She could learn, she could come on set. So be patient. And the other thing which I advise to anyone, not just young directors, producers, anyone, is just ask. Don't think you need to know everything. It's fine. We still learn every day. So if someone says we need to shoot underwater, how do you do it? We might say, we don't know, but we'll know tomorrow. And then phone people and ask. And that's cool. That's my advice.
Thank you so much for that advice. I love it. Essentially, if you don't know how to do it, figure it out. Say yes and figure it out. Director Kit, what advice do you have for new people coming into the industry, coming to into the space? What advice would you have wanted, should I ask, before you had entered the industry?
It's one that I'm working on very much, is you need to have a peace of mind, because it's a lot of changes, it's a lot of development. You need to keep getting better. You need to meet new people. But at the center of all of these things is you. And if you don't have the peace of mind in terms of you are comfortable with yourself, you're comfortable with your choices, it's going to be very hard for you to keep going and to keep growing.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that. And excuse me, what's so beautiful is you're speaking from a place of being in it. sometimes, you know, people get advice from people who are not in that space, but you're coming from it. This is where I am, I'm doing it, and I'm giving you the advice from that perspective. So thank you so much for that. And Gale, over to you, from a research assistant to director. I mean, you know, tell me, what is the advice that you would want to impart?
Do what they said. What they said. Work hard, be patient, do the things, and be disciplined. But I think the biggest thing that I wish I could have explained to myself, beyond like the nomenclatures of like you have to like show up early, work hard, ask, like beyond that, I would have told myself, be a person you want to work with. Because for me personally, I find that the relationships I have as a director are ones I started when I was running around doing whatever it took to just be around, to see the things happening. If it meant fetching coffee, okay. If I was locking off a road, okay. If I'm not sleeping, oh good. Like, I want to do this job so bad. But I think what I should have told myself is that overall, think about who you want to be in a team, because as much as directing is a like a very like glamorous seeming or important feeling position to be in, it's essentially a team sport. What I do, filmmaking is not something I can do alone. So if you can make yourself intangible to the team you're going to be a part of, you are doing the job. And that means doing all the work, working hard, showing up early, on time, staying longer, working hard, being patient. But it also means having a resilience in yourself where, while all that's happening, you can be genuinely good to people while you have to go through these things, and you have to genuinely be good to the work. And if you could just show up as not who you want to be, but show up as someone who would want to work with, you do everything you would need to. No one wants to deal with hard, tough stuff. It's hard enough.
Wow, certainly. So inspiring, so inspiring. I think all of this advice should be compiled and created into a short film that can live on various platforms. But special thank you to all of you. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for your wisdom and for all of the advice and knowledge that you've imparted with our viewers today. Thank you all.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you to our amazing guests, and thank you all so much for joining us for Bizcommunity's industry-wide initiative celebrating these important conversations around diversity and inclusivity in the South African advertising industry, made possible by the generous support of the ACA, Association for Communication and Advertising.